Massive weekend for South Carolina in recruiting with several crystal ball predictions going to the way of the Gamecocks. Could South Carolina end up with a top 10 class in the 2026 class? Also, what does that look like if they do? Locked on Gamecock starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marlowe, joined by a very special guest in the background, Pepper, the adorable corgi, who is already fired up and barking. But want to say welcome in. We have a great show for you tonight. We're kicking off the month of June with some recruiting news, and it was a big weekend in recruiting. Before we get into it, do want to say thank you to everyone making Locked On Gamecocks a part of your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, guys, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. I tell you what, take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Now, let's get into this. Recruiting has been the lifeblood of college football for a long time. And South Carolina has done a really good job at being at least consistent. And they've hovered around. We talk about this all the time. You guys have heard me say it a bunch. They hover around being between that 18 to 25, usually 18 to 22 range in terms of national ranking. Now, that's really good to be top 20 or around the top 20. But what that also means in a conference that's as competitive as the SEC, especially in recruiting, and everything's an arms race. Now, what that also means is you're probably ending up around 10th or 11th or 9th in the SEC. So if you are trying to compete from your conference into a national level, it's difficult to do that with a class that ranks in the 20s, even though it's still a good job. But the next two cycles, and this year specifically, building off of what Shane Beamer and South Carolina have been able to do on the recruiting trail and the transfer portal and all those things combined, there's a chance that South Carolina could end up with a top 10 class in this year. And if they do, the building blocks for the next year in the 2027 class, which may be the deepest class in the history of the state. What does that mean for the state of South Carolina in recruiting, for one, and then also for the program at South Carolina? Does that mean that you are all automatically vaulted into a position where you're competing for the playoff? I think it does. This sport has been about Jimmys and Joes more than X's and O's for a very, very long time. You see it some places where even though you might lack Jimmys and Joes in comparison to other schools, the X's and O's become a bigger impact on it, right? That you've seen it with South Carolina at sometimes. But there's not been a school and a program that's been able to develop better and identify talent better than South Carolina. And going into this year, it was kind of a preconceived idea that listen, they're going to finish where they usually finish because they don't have the same amount of money they're spending as other places. They don't have the same kind of facilities, and all of that, and we've seen over and over again, has proven to be untrue. Top 10 facilities, they're spending at a rate that's higher than they ever have before, and it's higher than a lot of other SEC schools. They're doing everything in their power to not just identify hidden gems and then develop them into future first rounders and top 50 picks. They're finding way more success really than they have in more than a decade with the top end premier athletes. Now, this weekend, massive recruiting weekend for South Carolina. They had several visitors visiting Columbia. And afterwards, you had a lot. I was woken up today from a text from our good buddy SC Mike Bratton, who sent me a crystal ball prediction. And you had three of them that happened today alone after the weekend that were predicting premier athletes to land at South Carolina. The three that we got today, three-star defensive lineman Andrew Harris. He's probably going to be an edge rusher, 6'2", 235. Four-star defensive lineman Aiden Harris. So Andrew Harris and Aiden Harris. That's going to be difficult for me to remember. Aiden Harris is a little bit bigger, 6'4", 245, and a four-star recruit, top 100 guy as well. And then Landon Duckworth, and that's the one that has everyone buzzing. Landon Duckworth is a recruit, I believe, out of the state of Alabama, Jackson, Alabama, who who has been linked to South Carolina for a while. But most people early in his recruiting process thought he was going to Ole Miss. What Ole Miss has done has kind of played their cards a little bit too early with how they handle the recruiting process for quarterbacks. And what they've done is like for 2 years in a row, you've seen them stockpile transfer quarterbacks late in the cycle for depth. Spencer Sanders is a kid they got from Oklahoma State a couple years ago. They got 3 in the portal this year alone from the spring window. And Duckworth is a kid that is a 4-star dual threat quarterback. And like I said, out of the state of South Carolina or out of the state of Alabama, and is a top 50 national player. He's currently ranked the 6th best quarterback in the country, and he's a top 50 national player. What we have seen in the past from South Carolina recruiting is, man, they went out and got themselves about, 8 4-stars, right? Maybe 8 to 12 4-stars and 5-stars combined. Did a good job in the portal, got a bunch of places in need where they were able to attack and acquire talent and moving forward. And then you'll see those guys kind of sit and then wait. And a couple of them maybe start early, but for the most part, kind of sit and wait. We have not seen in a decade South Carolina go out and attack recruiting with multiple top 100 player commits at this level. And the reason why it's so important is not just the Jimmys and the Joes thing, but in this day and age of football, especially like now more than ever, NIL is great and it creates a lot of parity. But one thing about recruiting is these elite athletes that get to know each other at camps, 7-on-7 stuff in the summer, Elite 11 stuff, any of the All-American games, like recruiting, they want to play with each other. And elite talent wants to play with elite talent. And a lot of times that starts with whoever is going to be the signal caller of that class. And you look at South Carolina and what they've been able to do in recruiting, it's been great, especially defensively. The people they've been able to turn around and develop and put into the league. That's been awesome. What we have never seen at South Carolina, right? And I'm including Connor Shaw. Like Connor Shaw, that time period when you had like him, Dylan Thompson, like guys like that are like beloved players. You've never had a room at quarterback, especially where you have Lenore Sellers, you have Aaron Noland. Now you might have Landon Duckworth, who's a top 100 player, top 50 player nationally. Now I assume Lenore Sellers will be gone, but you have somehow, in less than 2 years, turned what has been the biggest, not detriment, but the biggest drought at a position that South Carolina has been good at by far. You didn't have a player drafted there for 35 years. And now you're talking about a room that would include multiple top 100 players, multiple Elite 11 finalists. And oh, by the way, a kid that was so good, he might end up being in New York this year for the Heisman Trophy ceremony. That is an insane 180. But the thing that makes this even better is getting this crystal ball means if you can get this kid early, the growth of this class and him recruiting other players in this class would grow exponentially. And that's what we're already starting to see with what they had this weekend. When we come back, I'm going to tell you about some of the other players that have also been crystal balled and who's on our wish list and what we're hearing from the latest after a massive weekend in recruiting like we talked about at the start of the show. Before we go, I do want to tell you about our friends one more time at Monarch Money. Now, listen, you guys have heard me talk about this before. Do you ever check your bank account? I did it on Sunday morning, and I felt very, very unsettled about it. But do you ever check your bank account and go, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center that you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop managing your money and start building wealth. Big difference there. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com code LOCKEDONCollege, all capital letters, all one word, for half off your first year. When we come back, we will be talking more about the recruiting weekend that was and what's to expect moving forward the rest of the summer with Gamecock recruiting. Locked On Gamecocks continues right after this. All right, let's get back into the recruiting talk. And here's the thing. Like I said, there's other players that I have personally on my wish list that I want more than Landon Duckworth, because Landon Duckworth is a kid that is obviously really talented, but also I think there's other positions of need you need to address right away. I love what this team has at the quarterback room already, but landing kids like this, not only are they really, really good at what they do, and this kid being 6'3", 200 pounds, only going to have a bigger frame. I mean, it's hard to look at this, especially the teams that are involved in this recruitment. It's hard to look at this and not get excited, especially with what he could surround himself with. What you're seeing at South Carolina right now, and why this quarterback situation has gone from a troublesome and worrisome situation. I mean, guys, bless their effing hearts for how much they worked for this program, and we'll never not be grateful for it. But we're a couple years removed from Zeb Nolan and Jason, what's his name, coming out here and playing quarterback, and you're like, what is going on? You had a guy named Zeb playing quarterback for 4 games, like in the SEC. Like, do you think about how unstable, and maybe that's the best way to put it, Dakarian Joyner having started the bowl game that year against UNC and balling out, by the way, but like how unstable that position was then versus, oh my God, like we're a few years removed from saying, like, if you bring in a 4-star quarterback, that he better start day one. Like, we hope he starts day one, because they have to be the most talented person in the room already. Now you're sitting here like, oh man, Landon Duckworth would be a nice depth piece to be our 3rd-string quarterback, and that's insane to have done this good of a job. But what you're seeing too, especially, is players like this are starting to realize that for a long time we saw this with quarterbacks, especially, where it's like, yep, I'm going to blaze my own trail. I'm going to go play under this coach. I want to play in this offense, blah, blah, blah. But you also have seen places where it's like, well, if I go to this school, then, like what's around me? Like, what talent is around me? And South Carolina has not really had a ton of quarterback strength over the past few years. It's one of the reasons Juice Wells left. And now listen, South Carolina won that breakup by all means. But that's one of the reasons Juice Wells left, to go play in an offense where he had Jackson Dart throwing the football. Those two things are very symbiotic in terms of quarterbacks want to be able to be in a place where they're going to throw to a lot of good receivers. Receivers want to go to a place where they're going to have a chance to catch a lot of balls from a quarterback. And you saw last year, it's like, man, they got another 4-star receiver. They got another 4-star top 100 receiver. They got another, under all-American receiver. Like, and so now that's paying dividends. Even though those guys might not see the field as much this year, the recruits that you're talking about with quarterback position going to next year are looking at that saying, like, oh, I get to throw to these guys? And they're already going to be a year in? Yeah, I mean, I'll take that. I'll take that. So love this. Love the fact that you had Landon Duckworth get crystal ball there. The other crystal ball players that you also saw this week, my one that's a big one, Tamarian Watkins, 6'4", 200-pound safety between South Carolina and Georgia. He is an overwhelmingly favorite to land at South Carolina now. Kid out of Rock Hill, South Carolina, 4-star recruit, like I said. That's a big deal. Now the other ones, because there was multiple, like I said, and I'll start with over here on 247, but because you have them on both sides. But keep in mind also the Landon Duckworth situation. He was projected not only on 247, but also the Wilfong, the Fong Bomb prediction on 3. Both sites with 2 experts, J.C. Sherbert from the Big Spur does a great job at 247, and then also the national guy at on 3. Not Pete Nakos is one of them, and Steve Wiltfong. That's about as big as you can get, right? For those guys predicting from what they're hearing. That's based off of intel that they're getting from the program. Now, 247 also, like I said, they had 3 guys, Aiden Harris, Andrew Harris. Those are also all really big players. Aiden Harris and Andrew Harris both fill a specific need right away. Aiden Harris, a kid that's again, top 100 player. Top 100 player. And what you're starting to see more than ever with South Carolina this year, more than anyone else or any time else, you're starting to see, like, they're not winning recruits over Kentucky, Florida State, Florida maybe, sometimes Clemson. Like, those are all big names, but, like, a lot of times you would see these 3-star recruits that, they might have some offers like from bigger schools, but like you're winning some over Auburn or Arkansas or Vandy or like whatever. Like you're winning these recruiting battles that you should be winning because you're a better program than them. Now, the recruiting battles that you're going into are, listen, Aiden Harris is like a 50-50 lean, it looks like, between South Carolina and Ohio State. That's a big difference between, we got a kid over Kentucky. I mean, winning battles over Ohio State. You look at some of the guys they had on campus this weekend, right? And you had 3 top 100 players that were visiting this weekend, and they were all between South Carolina and then places like Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, right? You watch what South Carolina's able to do, and they're focusing in on the Washington, D.C. area, which has not only been a hotbed for recruiting talent for a long time, it's been a very, very fertile and plentiful recruiting ground for South Carolina. South Carolina's done really well there. So when I look at this and I think, what do I want most out of recruiting for this next couple months, right? For the next couple months, like what am I looking at in terms of what I want more than anything else? And I have 3 players on my wish list. The first thing I want, though, before I get to the players, you need to land at least 6 guys. You've seen one of the things they've done a really good job over the past couple of years is guys they invite to their camp. Guys, they don't make this like it's like, hey, we got 50 guys coming in, free for all. Let's spend as much money on this weekend as possible, and we'll see. We'll throw a blank at the wall and see what we get. They're very calculated in the people they're bringing on campus and what they're doing. And you talk to guys like Darren Usher, and who's already looking ahead to the 2027 class, and that may be the deepest class in the history of this state. 8 players right now. 8 players who are ranked a 4-star or better in that class. Putting up a fence around the state means a ton. And I feel like you already have a leg up on Clemson to an extent because it's a part of the state that they have really ignored for a long time when they were on their rise to becoming a national power. Now they're trying to get some of those relationships built back up because of how much talent is in the state. So the first thing I want, if I'm a South Carolina fan, and this again, before I'm getting into the 3 players on my wish list, I need you to land. I would love to get through summer with 10 to 15 total recruits. I think right now you're sitting about 5. Would love to go into the fall with 10 to 15 guys like on that have committed so that you feel strong about, so you're not having to spend a ton of extra time in the fall on recruiting. Now, there's going to be some guys, of course, that are going to be late-minute decisions, and you want them to come experience the magic of Willie B and all those things. Also, other guys that are going to play their senior year, junior year, and you're going to see just how much they've developed and how good of a year they're going to have, and guys that are like kind of quote-unquote late bloomers, maybe flying under the radar now, that you can then go, assess their film and bring in later into the fold. But you want to go into the season with at least a semblance of, I feel really good that we have 50 to 70% of our class figured out. And then we can start figuring out the rest of them later. Now, the 3 guys I have on my wish list, and this is not going to surprise anybody, okay? Not going to surprise anybody. I got 3. 2 of them, no shock. Darius Gray, kid out of Richmond, Virginia, interior offensive lineman, the 16th best player in the country right now. He's a 5-star. Here's why I'm big on this. I love what you have at the tackle position. I love what you brought in to replace some of the guys you lost in the interior offensive line last year. But Josiah Thompson is going to, I think, progress into a really good left tackle. He's going to have a veteran experience going into this season already, if he's a sophomore. And next year, as a draft-eligible junior, he should be the best he's been. Getting a guy like Darius Gray to shore up the inside, which is something you've kind of struggled with, and being able to do that and get, like, one of the things about Josiah Thompson that's so great is you're not having to go to the portal to get a position of need that's that big right now. What you're able to do there is, all right, we got a former high 4-star, borderline 5-star prospect at left tackle. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to start him day 1. He's going to grow into the role. He's going to be great. And now we don't have to worry about a top 3 most important position in the entire sport for the next 3 years. You don't have to, because you already have that shored up. Getting a guy like this to come in and play in the interior defense or offensive line would be great, to not have to go out into the portal, find a kid from Wake, find a kid from, South Carolina State, from Charlotte or wherever, to fill that need right away. That would be awesome to be able to see. The other one, I have two, Carter Meadows. Anytime you have a 6'6", 230-pound athlete such from Washington, D.C., that's bode pretty well for South Carolina over the years. That's a kid that I fully expected he would probably play, right away. And getting a kid like that, who is a borderline 5-star, top 50 player in the country, that's an elite talent. Now you're going up against, like I said, several Big Ten powers for him, but I love where they're at with him. And the final one, it's not even a guy that's the highest ranked out of everyone else. It's Julian Walker, and he's another guy that's a top 200 player. He's ranked 155 in the country right now in 247, but he's from Dutch Fork. He's from Irmo. He was Dutch Fork High School. It's a prominent power in the state, and I love the idea of that mix of people. Let's go get a kid from Washington, D.C., where we have done a great job finding talent and producing talent from that area. Then let's go out and get a kid that's a 5-star that shores up position need for us for several years in a row now that can start right away. And then, by the way, last one, why don't we go and find one of the best programs in the state right now, one of their top players that can step in right away, 6'6", 230 pounds, can play defensive line, and that's also not only a position of need, but something you always need. So, Julian Walker, Carter Meadows, Darius Gray. Those are my 3 guys that I had going into before the weekend that are the highest on my wish list. If you can land 2 of them, go ahead and get some other guys in the fold early that start recruiting others. This whole thing could end with a top 10 class, and that is something we haven't seen at South Carolina. And that could be something that would lead to other things we haven't seen at South Carolina, namely competing for a national championship in the very near future under Shane Beamer. That is all for today's episode with Locked On Gamecocks. I hope all of you have a great rest of your Monday night or Tuesday morning, whenever you're hearing this. And we will come back tomorrow with another episode talking more recruiting, also some good news from the baseball front, which something we haven't had in a long time. Appreciate you guys. See y'all then. Until then, go Cox.